welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah, and in this video I wanted to discuss something that I think is going to make life a little bit more difficult if you are planning to buy a home in the coming years. I think you'll find the information in this video relatively interesting, so with that being said, let's get right into it. So the reason I am making this video today, and you guys can see kind of the title and what it suggests, but basically what was happening was I was watching a TED Talk quite recently within the last week, and it was a really good TED Talk. I'm going to send a link to that TED Talk in the description of this video. I think it's really interesting. So if you do have an insight into finance and economics and so on the national scale, I think that would be a perfect TED Talk for you. But I was listening to it, and one of the points that the individual made during the speech was essentially that buying a house, right? So getting into property ownership has become extremely difficult than it previously was, and is going to likely continue to become more difficult, right? And it might even get to the point where it is basically unattainable for the majority of individuals, which I'm going to kind of discuss in this video. So that is basically the essence of that TED Talk. And like I said, if you do have an interest in it, I highly suggest you take a look. So as I said, the point in that TED Talk was essentially to articulate that housing has become, or one of the points in the TED Talk, I should say, was basically stating that it's become increasingly difficult to get in a home, right? Get into home ownership, and it's likely going to continue to be that way. So what I wanted to do is kind of look at the data on my own. So I looked into my favorite place for information, which is right here. This is FRED, or the Federal Reserve for Economic Data. And basically they have a lot of different financial information. It might be a little boring to kind of go over everything that's here, but this is basically where I pulled all of the information that I'm using for my example from in this video. So after doing a little bit of research, I was able to come up with these six rows right here that you can see in Excel. And of course, we are working in Excel as always. So starting at the top, what I basically wanted to do in order to gather some information on if this statement by this individual was actually the case, and to actually see it kind of for myself, was compare how income stacked up against the cost of housing, right? So I looked about 20 years back, 24 years into the past, and I pulled the median home price and then the median individual income for that time period. And I also did it for 2024, at least the most up-to-date data that we have for 2024. So as we can see, starting in the year 2000, the median home price is right here at $165,000. Nowadays, that sounds like a pretty sweet deal. And the median individual income for that time period, was $21,520. So, this is pretty good information. Let's add another piece to this puzzle, which is the 2024 information, which thus far in 2024, the median home price is right around $420,000. So immediately we can see that this is at least double, right? It's probably about 2.5 times more expensive than it was 24 years ago, right? So quite an increase. And the median individual income for 2024, or at least to my best estimate that I came up with using FRED, was $42,500. So this is great, right? We have 4 data points, or 4 pieces of information, and we can kind of articulate a little bit from this, right? Obviously, the income is lower, right? This is just how it's been, and we can see that the income has roughly doubled in that time period, but we know that the cost of homes has more than doubled, right? It's about 2.5, or slightly over 2.5, I believe. But the question that we were looking to kind of answer, or find out more information about, was how the unaffordability of housing has increased over time. So I'm going to expose another column here that is going to have a little bit more data that I hope will help kind of understand this point. So I'm going to expose it right now. So what are these two numbers, right? 7.7, 9.9. These numbers, or at least 7.7 in this case, is the ratio between the median home price, right, at the time in 2000, in the year 2000, and the median individual income. Simply put, if you were to make 7.7 times your salary, or if you were to make your salary for 7.7 years, that equates to the cost of your everyday single family home during that period. And now when we go down to year 2024, around this period, it is now switched to 9.9, meaning you need to make this 42,500 9 times over in order to get the same median house, right? These are average houses that we're talking about here. And if you are curious, the reason I'm using median instead of average is that for both scenarios, right, for the house price and income, if we make it an average, right, so if we really include the weight of the really high earners, right, so these are the people making millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and also their homes, which are hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, it really tends to skew the data. So for these, I'm using, for this example here, I like to use the median for both the home price and the income as well. Now, just looking at this extra column that I exposed, right, the 7.7 times the salary and then the 9.9 for 2024, the point that was made initially in the TED Talk that I heard seems to be relatively consistent, right? Obviously, the ratio, it got more extreme, so it's more of a chore to get into a median home than it was 24 years ago. So there are two major issues that I see with this whole situation. Obviously, this is in effect right now, right, which is a problem. And the other thing to consider is that if this were to continue another 20 years, right, this only would be exacerbated, right? So this would even be a bigger issue down the road. So the first issue that I see with this is that this is simply put, it's taking away the opportunity for average, everyday Americans to build wealth in other ways other than their investments, right? Through their 401k, through their Roth, or maybe their individual brokerage account, whatever it may be. A lot of people like to diversify. It's always a good thing to kind of get into as many investment opportunities as long as they're consistent as possible, right? This is why we have a 401k and you want a Roth, right? You want a normal taxable account and you want a non-taxable account for retirement. This is just how it is, right? This is common sense. But a lot of individuals like to own a home because after it's paid off, you can do whatever you want with it, right? So it's a really good means for people in their older age to either pass it on to their kids, so their kids have an asset to work with. Maybe they sell it to help pay for all of the late life care, right? So nursing homes and funerals. Unfortunately, it's an unfortunate fact, but it's difficult, or it's expensive to die, right? In this country, at least, it costs quite a bit of money just to be dead. So those are the kind of things that people would like to have a property for, right? And I genuinely think that people like to be able to call something theirs, right? Home ownership is a big part in everybody's life, right? You meet someone, you have a kid, and you want a house together. You want to have neighbors. It's kind of like the gold standard, I think, in many areas, especially here in the United States. And this is obviously showcasing that this is becoming increasingly difficult and has been for quite some time. The second issue that I see with this situation is that it's essentially making it so a great deal of individuals, the majority of individuals, are going to be on this own nothing, rent forever, or own nothing, subscribe forever type of life, which we are constantly seeing already, right? There are some vehicle manufacturers that will only offer certain software or certain add-ons to the vehicle if you subscribe to whatever service that they have, right? $20 a month, $30 a month, whatever it is. And I think this is this teeters along the same line here, because as houses become more expensive and income just doesn't keep up with it, right? We're showcasing right here that the opportunity cost to get in to this ownership is becoming increasingly difficult, right? So if this were to continue, it might even become, like I said, impossible, completely out of reach for the majority of individuals. Therefore, they will have to rent forever. You can't set up a tent, right? And, build a faucet and have a house for free. That's just not going to happen. So you'll be forced to basically own nothing and rent or subscribe to something for the rest of your life. And I think this is really a red flag, or very scary on multiple avenues, just because the subscribing, everybody hates subscriptions unless it's a good service. But for something like housing and stuff, I don't think many people want to be a subscriber to that for life. Certainly bills are part of it, but actually paying forever is something that's a bit scary. And it also takes away this independence, I think, that people want, right? Families want at least a little bit of independence, something that they can call theirs. And I think this is definitely that's going to be exacerbated if this trend were to continue. So there you have it. Those are just a few of my thoughts on this whole situation, right? Where housing, or home ownership in this case, is becoming increasingly difficult, and there's really no sign of it slowing down unless there would be some kind of legislation in effect to ameliorate this, right? But a couple points that I mentioned are really big reasons as to why I think this is problematic. It's not only taking away from a normal individual from kind of getting involved with ownership and getting out of this whole subscription life, but it's also taking away from building wealth, right? Owning properties is a way to build wealth, and if you can't buy a property, you're not going to build wealth like many of these very wealthy individuals have done. But of course, I want to hear from you, the viewer, as well. What do you think of this whole situation, and what do you think this means for the future of the United States? Please let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, if you have any questions for me personally, or if you'd like to take a look at the financial services that I can provide to you, I've left my email and a link to my company website in the description box below. Thank you again so much for your time today, and of course, happy financing.